controversy going on it dates back to the mid-1980s, early 1980s, with that letter I gave you from the people from Day Road, that, they didn't rely on Aaron because he was still in grade school when it all took place. And I was on the board at the time. But I just see that, that's the problem with the long view, is we're good intention and we make good intention decisions, only to have those decisions be undermined by either failure to put the restrictions on the map, or a new board says, the old board, that was before you could smoke dope, now we can smoke dope, so the rules are different. It's legal now.
So I'd like to note for the record that the entire letter that Mr. Cummings presented was duplicated multiple times. There's copies available, and it was lodged in the record. Is that correct, Mr. Anderson?
I'm sorry.
Was the letter, which didn't make the packet, duplicated in its entirety and presented to the board to be included in the packets?
Yes, today it was.
Thank you.
And just to be sure, it was a finding of fact that a note be placed on the map, and that I think if the board's pleasure is to approve the map, we will reiterate that as a condition.
Go ahead.
I didn't have a question. He has a question.
You had a question.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to kind of tag on to Jim's comment. It's very true. There's that problem up there where that note never got placed. And so my question is, you have a note on there. Now, what's going to happen the next time you do a general plan and that is rezoned to something else? Is this note going to stay on there in perpetuity, or is this going to change if this is rezoned by the county?
Well, a note, I've been before this body, and I've talked about notes on maps fairly recently. And, there are those that would challenge notes on maps. And the case law has not been a bright line, but some have prevailed and got away from whatever the condition was placed on the map. In some places it stood up. So really, Mr. Chapman said, if I recall, it's the honorable way we do business as a government. And so, unfortunately, those are sometimes there are people that will challenge those things, and there are judges that will, go along with it. So
on that point, I'm not worried about the honorable people in the room today, because I think everybody here, can be on board and agree to a condition. What I have observed in my short time is that when the honorable people sell out, and maybe they sell it to another honorable person who's equally honorable, and then that person sells out to another person who they think is equally honorable, but turns out not to be honorable, and decides to come in and either use a court action or some other action to undermine the honorable decisions that were made, previously. And it could be 2 or 3 generations back, but down the road there will be somebody who will come in and try to change that arrangement to the detriment of the community around. So it becomes the veracity of the system that we're talking about. And it's not the people today, because I think the people today, and the people maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, had the right idea, and the board made the concession and compromise. But it like right now we're seeing with the day situation, it can come back and haunt us. And I just think that we need to understand, eyes wide open, what the pitfalls could be. And I'm not saying that this is going to turn into a day road, but who knows?
I completely agree with your analysis, and having worked here over the last where the rubber meets the road are the actions. And so, all this discussion is fine, but it will be wasted on those that, come later on. And so I have discussions with people from Richmond Gold Run area all the time. Well, that's not what we said we were going to do. We were going to do this and that. And I look in the open book, and this is what was done. So this is this. And so if, how far you want to entertain protecting that parcel from future development, you could, I've seen jurisdictions that would require, okay, if you're going to do that, then you need to rezone that open space. And then so if anybody ever comes along and wants to pull a fast one, it'll take 5 people to agree with it. And they'll look back at the record and see why they did it. versus
Maybe
a note
that's
on a
what
map.
you do is you rezone it to B20 instead of B4, and that creates, and that may be
Right.
the solution to the problem, that one of the conditions of approving something like that is to do that. Because when I was reading the file and trying to digest it last night, that was what kept screaming at me because of the experience of the patent. If I was brand new sitting here, I would, that would be the farthest thing from my mind. But I've been sitting here since the 70s watching the system begin. And that's how the game.
And you and I have had, we've been in this room talking about what was supposed to happen on Day Road, and it's frustrating because you were there. The record is the record, and the actions were the actions, and they're all three sort of different.
No, I would say I would beg to differ. I think the actions and the memory are consistent. I think that the people who want to revise, the direction are gaming the system. We're trying to. Oh, he's just an old fuddy-duddy. He doesn't know what he's talking. He can't remember anything. I remember a lot more than you.
Well, having been schooled by Mr. Chapman so many times, I will have to take my lickings.
In here, you talk about the water quality and water quantity that have to be improved. What, is there a set number on that? I know that goes back to the health department, but I mean, can we put some, what is their standards that they have? Other than quality and quantity, what is that?
They have to prove that they have the capacity to pump so much, and so.
Well, what's that so much? That's my
Well,
question.
I'm not the health department, but he did sign off on it.
I know he signed off on it, but he said the same thing.
What's that?
Quantity, you just said quantity and quality.
Yeah, and I'm not, it's not my forte, it's not what I do, so it's his jurisdiction. He either says that there's the capacity and there's the quality, or there's not.
And so do they have to go in and drill the wells before this final parcel map is approved?
I have to find the health department's findings.
There's a lot of things they have to do, and I think that is one of them before the final parcel map is approved. And I think in there somewhere I saw the minimum standard of 5 gallons
Yeah.
per minute.
Yeah, I didn't see that, that's what I was saying.
I saw it one time in 112 or 120 pages, and I read them all.
So presumably the only use would be domestic use.
Correct.
Right, and there's a lot of things he must do before he finalizes his map. My question was, are you sure you want to do this? Because you're spending some money.
Well, there is a well on the property now with a current resident, and that well was tested, and that's what Mr. Health Department,
That's John.
Mr. Jones refers to.
Do you know what that pump will do?
It qualified the 5+ gallons per minute, and the water was tested, and it tested.
And if all it's going to do, everyone build a house, you'd have many more of those.
Yeah, there would be evidently this is a 75-foot well, so standard is 100. So if the 75 puts out, then the 100 should do the same.
So the health department's condition is the health department has determined that water testing will be necessary to determine adequate water quality and quantity are available to serve future residential development. Testing requirements are included in the memorandum at the TAC, which is somewhere here, dated 9/14. So, they're going by state standards.
Did that answer your question?
That does.
Anybody else on the board have a question on the staff report?
Is that a floodplain in there?
No, it's not. If you can, do you know the map that shows the wetlands?
It'd have to be a flash flood off Ball Bell.
It is not, though. The short answer, it's not a floodplain. Portion of the remainder parcel is identified as a wetland. And that's the wetland area.
So all this started in 2002. And from what I gather, there was a note on the map that there was not going to be any future splitting.
Right.
Okay.
South of the road.
South of the road.
Okay. Does the public have any questions for the staff report? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, do you have any new correspondence?
Just what was just given
Other
out today.
than more granted. Okay, does anybody in the audience wish to speak in opposition of the project? Patty?
My name's Patty Gomez. Ross and I are property owners next to this parcel. And we do feel, our letter said, it creates a density inconsistency. If you look on the map, his 4 1-acre parcels are the only ones. The hillside, up and down Cummings Road, everywhere. Drought situation, the wells, 7 septics on this size seem like a lot. And on the 20 acres on the south side of the road, as I remember it, I'm sure Mr. Cummings will correct me, he applied to put 5 houses on that side of the road. It did not perk. And I don't understand how it went, but the concession was made, he could take X number of splits on the other side. The south side, 20 acres, did not perk for 5 houses. And I don't know, if this is approved, does it open the door for more 1-acre splits in that area of the people that have 3, 5, 10 acres? So we do have a lot of concerns. We live in a rural area, and it's also my understanding, which I'm not sure of, it is a subdivision application, which that word scares me in an agriculture area. So I guess that's where Ross and I stand with this. Thank you.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure, but I'm almost sure. Looks like you could have been sitting up here for the campaign.
Can I add these to the? It's basically the same map you have, but I kind of, there's 2 pages there you can look and see what he did, and then on the page that you got, you could see that I kind of drew in.
Do you have another copy of that, Mr. Bowles?
And that's it. That's all I've got. I've got
Yeah, I'll make copies.
Yeah, can I borrow this to
Sure,
make copies?
absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll get some copies while I'm
To me, this is a no-brainer moral issue. I didn't know we'd have to have a lawyer. But anyway,
Oh, good. Would you say your name to recorder?
Kenneth Max Tenen. Okay, what I basically like Patty, you know, it's the total parcel on this side of Cummings Road, not the Cummings Road side, but the north side, was 10.64 acres. There's already 4 splits on it now, okay, of approximately 1.24 acres. One's 1.29, the other one's 1.24. If this split goes through, it'll mean that 7 parcels on 10.64 acres. You can go anywhere in either direction to Standish or Jamesville and not find that small parcels. You know, and it's right in the middle of Cummings Road is right in the center of Honey Lake Valley, basically. And with the water situation, we'd have 7 wells, 7 septics on that small parcel. And that's on that 10.64 acres. And the 20.11 acres is across the street. It's the lowest point of Cummings Road. And it wouldn't perk. You know, it won't perk anyway. So all those splits would be on 10.64 acres. 7 parcels. And I think it'd be a problem, especially the way things are now and everything. It's not the area that should be broke up. It's just a no-brainer moral situation to me. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, does anybody wish? Oh, I'm sorry. There is one. You gotta be fast here, girl. Would you say your name for the record?
Marguerite Stewart, and I live on Cummings Road. I'm a neighbor, and I do oppose this.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, does anybody wish to speak in support?
Well,
I'm Michael Cummings, the owner of the property, and I'm the one who submitted the plan. To give a kind of a brief overview and not go too elaborate with it, I grew up in the area. My folks bought the place in the late 40s when I was 5 years old, and I lived there until I was 20. Graduated from Janesville Elementary School, Lassen High School, Lassen Junior College, until I went on to Cal Poly, getting an engineering degree. And my folks lived there till their dying days, and so me being the only member left of the family before, I inherited it back in '98. And when the property was inherited, it was in pretty poor condition. And so I went ahead and I put time and money into it to bring it up to attractive property now. I went to the planning commission at the planning department, and I said, you know, this 30 acres I've got here doesn't seem to be anything that's profitable for me in the way of agricultural use, so what else might I do with it? They said, well, you can split it into 7 parcels. You've got 30 acres, it's a 4-acre minimum there, so you can split it up into 7-acre parcels. You can do one of that. You can build houses on it as rentals, or you can sell them off and someone else build houses to live in. I said, well, okay, that sounds doable. So then I hired services at Jim Up to Grove, and we put together a 7-parcel split of the 30 acres. That was 5 acres, 5 parcels on these 20 acres, and 2 parcels on 10 acres. And a portion of it was designated as a leach field because the 20-acre didn't perk. So there was designed, Mr. Up Grove designed a sewage system that would pump, go under the road and up to this designated leach field on the 10 acres, which is in sandy soil and very perkable. It was went through all the departments and was finally given the green light until we got to the planning commission. And it appears that those in opposition today were in opposition then. They went door knocking, riled the community against it, and therefore the planning department says, well, let's do something different here. Let's designate that 20 acres green belt, pasture land, and using the density option, let's put the 7 parcels on the 10 acres. That would be as what we're doing now. We got 6 1-acre plus parcels, plus a 3-acre with the building site. So I talked to Jim Up to Grove how to do this. He says, well, it's best to do a map split first. That's the easier way to go. And then phase 2 would be subdivision. And that way you don't go too fast and you don't get the community riled up so quickly. And so we did the 4-acre map split, came in, and of course the community wanted to come in and shoot that down too, but they were voted against their wishes and voted in favor of the 4-acre split. And then where's my letter here that I have?
This one?
Yeah. You'll see this in your letter under the density option note. You see here that no further subdivision shall take place south of Cummings Road. No residential development shall be allowed south of Cummings Road. So I agreed to give up that privilege to be able to divide to split up the 10 acres. Any future subdivision shall be limited to that portion of the remainder parcel north of Cummings Road and will be limited to 3 lots, 2 additional lots. And this is what Mr. Upper Grove then would call phase 2. And this, of course, it has to be called a subdivision because you did a map split. An owner can do a map split once, and after that it has to be subdivision. I sold the property to someone, and then they did it, then they could do a map split. But in my case, it has to be called a subdivision. So these restrictions shall be disclosed on all these containing 4 newly created parcels and remaining parcel. So we see here that at that point that there was approval of these 4 parcels, that I had the option of submitting a plan that would be 3 more lots, which would be 2 additional lots. And this is what this phase 2 is now that I've submitted here. So what we have here then is my main purpose for this right now. I have 6 grandchildren, and I'd like to have 6 1+ acre parcels to will them in my estate plans. And that's basically what it is now. There's no plans to make this into a Cummingsville or some big development now, shake everybody up, which is probably remain that way for years to come as it is. Now you're going to hear objections. You already heard some water, sewer, bundling of the houses, making the precedents. Well, where it comes to precedents, probably the section is already pretty well developed. There's only about a half a dozen other parcels that are over 8 acres that could be split up into a couple, 3 more parcels. But using the density option, my understanding is you can't just say, oh, I want to split this 8 parcel into 7 and a 1. Well, why do you want to do that? Well, just because I want to do it. Well, it would go 4 and 4. It's going to be make precedence unless there was a reason for it. Reason would be maybe the other area of the acres is non-buildable, and only one little 2-acre corner is the only place you can build houses. So something like that might pass. But where it comes to sewer and water, some of the objections you saw from the planning commission was it's too much density for water and sewer. Well, there's 100-foot minimum between a well and a septic system. And this are long, narrow dots, and it's well over 200 feet distance. So it's a lot of distance between the water and the sewer application there. Where it comes to bundling, there's a lot of bundling in the area now. If you go up Cummings Road on the north side, in the area where, was it Martin lives? There's houses next door to each other, all bundled there, and you go down Max Finnan's place. He's got 3 houses on 3 acres. It's 3-acre parcel bundled there. You heard Patty Gomez. She's got a bundle of 2 houses in her backyard. One is a rental in her residence. There's bundling all over the place. But yet, if I want to bundle, there's objection to it. So anyway, that's my point, and I guess I'll have Mr. Pelley speak now for in the area of the legal spectrum matter.
Very briefly, Peter Townhill, Lassen County resident. The 1-acre precedent argument really doesn't fly because this only qualifies for this because of the density option, because everything comes out the same, as Mr. Chapman pointed out, with 20 acres being held as never to be developed. Mr. Cummings was almost promised this 10 years ago. The water and septic argument, it's just conjecture. Yes, we're low on water, but we don't know how much water is down there. Does that mean we never issue another building permit? This house, the home place, is pumping water at 75 feet. Seems to me that table's pretty good in that area. And really, that's all I have to say. It's in your good hands. It's nice to see you all again.
Anybody else wish to speak in support? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board and close the public hearing at 11:49. Question to the board, Mr. Clay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I've served on the planning commission for quite some time, and, this is why we have these different options for different scenarios. Density option is one of those, and each time I sit on there, it's not easy sometimes, and it's not, but it is a good option from just splitting everything up, because, everybody wants open space. Everybody wants to look out and see a green field and cows on it, and the deer and the antelope running through it, etc. Whereas if it was all chopped up with, you wouldn't have the wildlife and the scenic views of things. This is what we have the density options for. And, personally, it's being done right, and it's being done appropriately. But my concern is like what Jim said earlier, but the same thing on Bay Road, is how are we going to preserve got 20 acres over on the other side. Is a note on the map going to be enough? Do we need to change the zoning? Do we need to change the zoning and have a note on the map? I mean, to make sure that we're not opening up a can of worms sometime in the future. But I mean, I think we can get all of that taken care of today, looking back and taking care of correcting the mistakes of the past and the made the past with some of the other issues. Anyway, that's just Mike, and those are just my thoughts. And like I said, I think this is a viable project. It's being done the right way, and appropriate way.
It's really good.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment that I think if the board wants to make notes on maps have effect and have meaning, there's a process to go through to do that, and that's the adoption of an ordinance that basically says that notes on maps have effect. And to date, the board's declined to do that, but that's certainly something that could be entertained to facilitate that.
Can we change the zoning from the board to open space? Do we have a problem to do?
Have to be remanded back.
Remanded back and make sure the analysis for sequence can adequately address.
I think the narrow scope of this hearing is to ascertain whether or not the application as presented, and based on the evidence here today, should be granted and essentially the Planning Commission overturned. But I don't think we have the authority necessarily to then deviate outside the bounds of that.
First of all, I have to, I think, and without going back and looking at the record, my recollection is back in 2002 when these 1.24 acre parcels were created on that particular application that I had included in the ones of ordinance. And I think the issue is larger than just, doing the density option. I agree with Mr. Alba. I think in that respect, what we're seeing before is how that is supposed to be done. And I think it's a legitimate tool to try to preserve some of the open space that the people want. That's why they live out in the valley. They don't live in town. I mean, I live on a, half-acre parcel just down the street, and you have neighbors crowded around you. Living in the city is a lot different than living in the country. And, people have to have choices, and we have to have choices. The concern, though, beyond just how you preserve and protect the density option, and I appreciate Mr. Egan saying that what we do is we adopt an ordinance that means that things on the notes on the maps mean something. First person to say that in 35 years. And I think that's a great suggestion. Where boards in the past declined to do it because they never were given that option, to be able to do it. I think had that been articulated to the board in a way that, we could, I think the board should consider that if we're going to be making those kind of revisions. But there's another issue, though, I think that has to be factored into the determination. And I'm just looking at, this is page 26, this particular map, and I think Mr. Kinman also included that in his handout as well. So it is, when you look at the map, and predating 2002 when those 4 parcels were created, the Planning Commission, the board, and the communities around the county went through the general plan revision process. And that was in 1990 and 2000. Bob remembers that very well because he was fairly new on the board at the time. And Gold Run had issues, and we had issues all over the county in a similar kind of fashion. But this was one of the more hot button areas. Because when you look at all these parcels, there's 2 acres, 4 acres, 4 acres, 6 acres, 7 acres, 5 acres. I mean, they're more than that. I mean, that's the dominant acreage. Then you get down here, some 3-acre stuff, and there's another 2-acre over here, and these are little remaining parcels, a 9-acre, 10-acre, 10-acre. And all this area here is to what degree we going to parcelize this. And we had some fairly good fights over whether it should be A2, B4, A2, B10, A2, whatever the issue is in terms of letting it break down. So all these B4 was kind of set for these parcels in here. This is that little island area that was referred to earlier. And by having B4 in there, that's why it was all green, it really kind of precluded any of these parcels from being divided, because you can't come up with enough acreage. There's, in fact, not one of them, except for it was that 10-acre parcel that received 4 pieces because of the density option being shifted. But now we have these 1
Thank you. No. Take care of it. Bye-bye.
Meeting back to order. Let's take up F1.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, F1 is the Doyle Parks Committee, and appointments to the Doyle Parks Committee. If you look at the packet, you'll notice that there are interestingly 9 persons on this committee. It appears from the, that's a heck of a committee. And it looks like a number of those folks have been on that committee for a number of years. And it looks like all 9 of them want to be on it again. And it also looks like all 9 of them are up now. There's no staggering of the terms that I can tell. And so that is
It's an easy one.
yeah, it appears that we have written confirmation from all 9 of the individuals listed on the agenda that are requesting reappointment. And I don't know if there are any questions on pinch hitting for the clerk. And you're welcome. She's happy.
Oh yeah, let's get them all back. They actually function pretty well.
Got a motion?
Yes. Motion.
Motion is second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Go to information consent calendar. Anything there to be taken off for separate discussion? Seeing none, we got a motion to pass the information consent calendar as written. Second. Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. I think about 3 pages. We have, how long do they want to take?
Just as long as you want it to.
2 minutes and 56 seconds.
Yeah. Go ahead, Richard, you got this.
All right. What you have in front of you is a recommendation for some budget adjustments regarding BLF sales tax realignment. And due to AB 85, the state is funding the social services realignment through the BLF sales tax realignment instead of social services sales tax realignment. It's a change from the prior year, and adjustment will cover the revenue increase in the general fund and transfer of the funding to the social services tax realignment.
So it's cost neutral, it's just a.
Right, we're changing from one budget unit, one fund to another.
I would move Mr.
I'm sorry, just to comment on that, Health and Social Services was already here and asked for the increased appropriation to accommodate this increase.
I would move Mr. Hill that we approve the budget transfer.
Motion is second. Any more discussion?
One question on this, the DLF, is that actual DLF? The vehicle license fee, is that the actual fees for Lassen County?
That's our share of the vehicle license fees.
I guess we should say so it's clear on the tape in the minutes, and that I would move that we approve the recommended budget adjustments for general fund increased revenue and the state BLF sales tax realignment and increasing operating transfers out by $1,623,220 and to decrease from the social services sales tax realignment fund 166 revenue and sales and use tax, increasing the operating transfer in by $1,623,220.
We got a second on that. Any more discussion? Questions, answers? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. 4/5 votes, you like to vote.
I take the 4/5 vote. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Hinkle?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyle?
Aye.
You got 15 seconds left to stall. We'll have the clock item.
All right, staff, be getting ready.
A few minutes.
Staff, be getting ready for 11 o'clock public hearing. If we are on time.
We'll be on time.
And away they go.
Okay, I open public hearing at 11 o'clock and ask for staff report. And that public hearing is application 014-019, Mitchell Cummings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good morning. Maureen Anderson, Planning and Building Services. And as you said, we're here today to consider an appeal of the Planning Commission's March 4th, 2015 disapproval of subdivision application 2014-19, which was for the purpose of dividing 25.75 acres into 3 parcels and a remainder. The proposed parcels were, parcel A was to be 3.42, parcel B 1.11, and parcel C 0.11. The remainder parcel was to be 20 acres, 0.11 acres, excuse me, and that would be a remainder parcel not for residential development. So the application, the zoning is A2B4, but the D allows for a density option, so that basically means that you can make smaller parcels if you want to, if the board wants to, if the Planning Commission wants to, as long as the overall density stays the same. So that's what Mr. Cummings proposed to do, and that's how he got the smaller parcels, as you see there, the 2 little ones next to the original. And this is a subdivision because some years ago there was an application for a parcel map, which is right above it, and that's those 4 parcels right above the subject parcel. So again, this did go through the environmental review process. It went through TAC, it went to Planning Commission, and actually was heard twice, and ultimately it was denied. Most of the consideration from the Planning Commission's perspective was the density option, and that it was a departure from other parcels in the area, which were mostly 4 acres in size. Again, what Mr. Cummings did above there was slightly smaller some years ago when he did that application. And this is, I think, what his attempt is to finalize his application and have 2 more parcels. So this map indicates what the zoning is in and around the parcel area. You see the green is A2B4. You have some A2B2 above it, but most of those parcels are not 2 acres, they're larger. So
A2B2, that's the blue?
that's the blue, yes. And the green is A2B4. And below, it's south of the island, basically, coming from the road makes that island, is mostly agricultural and large parcels zoned for ag. And you see the brown is a big swath that goes towards Standish, which is also zoned agricultural. So, excuse me, everybody seems to be either sick or getting over being sick.
No.
Well, I'll add a third category, pending. So, excuse me. So, we went through, as I said, Planning Commission twice. We had a split vote the first time. We got the 5th member there, and the second time, and it was denied. And so, just from staff's perspective, the general plan does promote the idea of clustering, and so we didn't really have a problem with it. The process worked, though, because the Planning Commission heard it, there was opposition, and that's what it's all about. And so several of the neighbors showed up and were not in favor of the application, and that ultimately swung the Planning Commission to a denial. And that's why we're here today. So I'm willing to answer any questions. I know the applicant is here. There is an outstanding item. The packet is defective.
In what way?
Wait.
In what way?
In what way is we did not include the appeal letter by Mr. Cummings.
The actual request to appeal the decision of the Planning Commission to this body?
Yes.
All right. And we just had a conversation about that, didn't we, in the hallway?
We did.
And did we take that up with Mr. Talia to discuss whether they'd be agreeable to continue today or whether we should postpone?
We did, and the verdict was that they would like to continue. Now, I'm taking this conversation with Mr. Talia as he's representing Mr. Cummings. So I have not spoken to Mr. Cummings whether he wants to proceed, but I'm presuming his counselor does.
Let me ask a specific question. what specifically is missing? Just the one letter?
Just the one letter.
And can you identify the letter by date and from whom and to whom?
I can. That's not it.
And presumably it's not in the board packet either.
Correct.
Okay.
This is the actual letter, and it is dated March 13th, 2015, and it is a letter of appeal to the Board of Supervisors. You see several letters that Mr. Cummings has written that are in the packet, but those are mostly all to the Planning Commission. This did escape the packet in the process.
That's from Mr. Cummings to the Board of Supervisors. And it's dated, I'm sorry, what date?
It's dated March 13th, 2015.
Let me ask a quick question, if I may. Mr. Talley and Mr. Cummings, before we proceed, obviously you folks generated that letter and lodged it with the county. It didn't make the packet today, and I regret that, but that's nevertheless the state of affairs. Do you want to continue?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The only problem is Maury, the letter I have is dated March 11th. And is March 13th the receipt date?
Yes, I'm sorry, the receipt date is what I'm talking about.
Very good.
So are we talking about the same letter?
Yes.
Okay. And so, gentlemen, Mr. Cummings, Mr. Talley, you'd like to proceed anyways, despite that perceived irregularity?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have a copy for the board, though?
Yeah, I think Galen is busy making copies. Are these all the copies?
Yeah.
How many are here?
There should be 15, I believe. Can I see what you have?
And is it a fair statement that the content of the letter, there's nothing really any new material in there? It generally restates your position and the basis for your appeal. And you've made the arguments that are contained in many of the letters to the Planning Commission, and you'll be making those again today. Is that right?
Essentially.
Yes.
Essentially, it's basically the same substance.
Yes.
It does address another subject that's not in the other count. But see it.
Let's look at the council, let's take a couple minutes and let us just read it.
I think that's a perfectly
It's
sound
only,
idea.
it's only a page and a half.
Thank you.
Give us a couple minutes here.
When you get time, I'd like to ask more a question. Maybe after.
take the chairman and the planning commission have conflict of interest? Do you aware of anything?
I'm not aware of
I want to be more aware of.
it. Is that Chairman Solomon? I think he's still the chair of the planning commission.
Yes, and I don't know exactly where he lives, so Galen's trying to get a distance.
He's nowhere near this.
I mean, I don't know.
If we're talking about 500-foot rule and the like.
I don't know. That to me don't have any stipulation of what we do here today. I was just curious about what was going on at the planning commission.
I think we're talking more in his letter about just the common law conflict requirement of disinterested diligence. He spoke out and said certain things that caused Mr. Cummings to feel there was a bias, but I don't think that's material to today.
Okay, good enough. Go ahead, staff report.
Also, I just want to let the board know that there has been correspondence introduced just now. One is from Patty Gomez, and it's quick, so I'll just read it into the record. As a property owner next to the private utilities, we feel at this time, given the current circumstances, the proposed parcel division would create a density inconsistent with the surrounding rural area. In this high desert county, or excuse me, I think it's supposed to be county, we have more drought years than wet years to replenish the groundwater, so this project, if approved, could create 7 home sites, wells, septic systems on 10-acre parcel. Concerned neighbor Patty Gomez and Ross Gomez. And then also, there's a letter that came in that I'm fumbling around for here. This is, the letterhead is Paul and Brookshire Mehawk, and I probably slaughtered all those. Mehawk.
Brooke and Paul Mehawk.
And it says, Supervisors, we are asking that you not grant the waiver for the proposed parcel splits on Common Road. We have experienced a drop in the level of our own well over the last 5 years. Therefore, we do not believe the area could sustain the additional residential wells needed to support the proposed properties without adversely affecting the existing homes in the area. Your consideration in this matter is greatly appreciated. Sincerely. Those are the 2 items that just came.
If you would please give those to the clerk. And before we get to Mr. Chapman's question, if I could, just on a matter of procedure, we were talking about this letter that didn't hit the packet, and that's the letter dated March 11, received March 13 from Mr. Cummings to the supervisors, really his letter of appeal. In the 3rd paragraph, it references an Exhibit A, which is attached. I don't see it, but is that part of the packet? That, of course, is, sorry, maybe you want to come back to that. And then also, the next paragraph references a letter that he had prepared for the Planning Commission for your review that was also purportedly attached, but it's not to this. And I presume that's in the packet. And want to make sure that we have all the material that the applicant wants to submit and did submit for the board's consideration.
Are you asking me? I believe the conditions of approval are in the packet twice. Once from the Planning Commission and once for today's proposed if the appeal is granted.
And that's the first attachment or Exhibit A that you're talking about, the conditions of approval, correct? In that 3rd paragraph.
Well, I didn't write this letter of appeal, but I think it is.
Yeah.
The conditions of approval, I think.
Well, there should be a letter and 4 attachments.
Yes.
So this paragraph 3 is stating that attached is the original resolution from the original split above there. And, no, I do not believe that is in the packet.
The conditions of approval are in the packet.
This is Exhibit A.
And he attached the 2 pages to his appeal letter.
I'll take your word for it then.
They're in there twice.
Okay, then I think the question has been answered by the applicant.
So what was Bob's second question?
The next paragraph references a letter that had been prepared for the Planning Commission for the board's, this board's review. It lays out Mr. Cummings' plans in regards to the property for his family, as well as his input about the objection of the distant neighbor. question is that in the packet as well? We want to make sure that everything has been included that Mr. Cummings wanted to include as part of his appeal. I don't want there to be something that gets left out and that a decision is made on an incomplete record.
And I note that in the packet there are several letters from Mr. Cummings, so I would not be in a position to identify one from the other.
Why can't we copy it now, the way it was submitted, and just take a minute? Because I wouldn't bet my life that letter to the planning commission is in the packet.
Mr. Cummings, if you have that, I'll see to it copies are made and distributed promptly.
This is a copy of the letter I submitted. This is the letter you read.
Yes.
This here is in your packet to the commission.
Yes.
This here is Exhibit A that should be attached. It talks about.
And that's in twice, right?
This talks about the
Conditions of approval.
Condition to that we're following through with now.
Yes.
With the previous.
But that's in there twice, correct?
That's not in the packet as far as I saw. So just
Okay.
this is the map that shows the vicinity, section 6 actually, where my property is.
Okay.
It's attached.
Okay, so which one specifically should we copy from you?
Well, it's Exhibit A, mainly refers to this.
I think we should copy all these attachments to
That's
it.
a great idea. May I have that? And I'll just get a bunch of copies
And
made.
then the map on the last page.
Okay. There you go. Thank you. Those were all the questions I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions by the board of the staff report?
Yes, I do have one question, and I just want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at. I think I do, but yeah, it's, it goes back to the heart of the decision that was made by the planning commission, and it talks, I'm looking at this map, and this is on page 28, and then I'm looking at an aerial map that's on page 54, this one, and I'm looking at your colored map on the screen, and from what I understand, Mr. Cummings owns, based on the parcel map, the parcel that's identified with the 40 circle and the one with 44, and there's references in, I think it's the letter of March 11th, which we just got today, where it talked about the APN number 1310940 and 44. So Mr. Cummings is looking at those two parcels as his total holdings, and when you add 20.11 acres and 10 point, anyway, it comes to 30 acres roughly, give or take a little bit. And using the zoning of A2, B4, he divides 4 into 30 and comes up with 7. So in that respect, he's looking at it from a point of view of entitlement as to how many parcels he can create out of the holdings he has, which is, I don't know if it's one parcel that's split by the road or if it's two parcels, but regardless, it's about 30 acres. And, obviously when zoning's done, and I think this is for the benefit of our newer members of the board, and this, what I did see in the administrative record or file is the history. What I see the planning commission proposing, or at least the majority of them going along, because my commissioner voted no. He voted to support the application. And Mr. Purdy came and saw me afterwards and told me that he talked about Spoonbill, and he was going back to the history, and he thinks that historically this is how the property was being used. So he was at odds with the commission originally, I guess, in January. They split 2-2 with one of the members being gone, and then that member came back and wound up abstaining, but then one of the people who voted, I guess, yes,
For it.
changed and voted no, and so it became a 3-1 vote in the end. But this isn't the first time, and I'm sure it won't be the last time where we see, and what Mr. Purdy indicated to me was talking about using the density option, where if you have a fair amount of property, you kind of crowd everybody. I think this is similar to the dispute that's going on right now up on Day Road in the Northwest Fire District area in Aaron's backyard, up in the upper corner of the county, where they kind of basically herd all the properties into a particular area and leave the remainder of the property is kind of like as this, that's the trade-off, is having the open thing. And unless you specifically put on some maps that this is now, even though you have the zoning that shows that you could go down to smaller parcels, it opens the door for later on. So 3 staffs later, you have staff changeovers over 20 years, 10 years, however often, maybe every year. And you get board changeover, and now it's, jump ahead, it's 2025. This is 2015, and the board that was here in 1980 and 1985 or 1990, I can tell you had this very issue before them. And, okay, those 4 parcels were created on the top, and we're creating this kind of like, okay, we're going to crowd everything over here, and we're going to leave all this here kind of open. But if you don't track that, and the only way you can is if you put it on the map, I don't see that being proposed in this action, means that you come back later on, and you begin, okay, now you got a 20-acre parcel on the south side of the road, and without any reference to the density on the north side of the road that was a trade-off back when, you come back in and you divide 5 parcels out of that particular one down the road. And I've seen that play out several times. And the new board takes it and says, well, we're property rights advocate, and whatever the property owner, he should be able to get what he wants. So that totally undermines, in my opinion, the zoning. Now, I'm not sure if that's exactly the case that's going here, but if the board does proceed to overturn the planning commission, and there are 3 votes to turn it down, and you do go with this property density where you're creating more parcels on the north side and smaller area in exchange for keeping the bigger parcel on the south side more intact. Put something on there to make it so that 5 or 10 or 20 years from now, the new owner of that property, okay, with that zoning can't come back and say, I have an entitlement now to be able to further divide that, because then we'll wind up with a lot more density than what you hung out with. And I think the concerns the neighbors raised becomes a reality. So I just want to throw that question out, and I just want to find out from staff, is that what is being proposed, this density transfer, where the 20 acres is going to be kept more intact and not divided down in lieu of having more intense divisions on that parcel above?
That is exactly what the staff is conveying to you, and that is what my understanding with Mike all the way through since the beginning, 2002 or whatever it was. That's always been the catch. This is why we can do this. And from staff's perspective, we supported it because the general plan supports that clustering.
Right.
Whether it's the current thing of the board, the flavor of the board now, or not, but we take our marching orders from that book. And so the first
debate was
division,
hotly contested too,
right,
deciding that clustering option in the general plan.
So the first development also contemplated, he from the beginning has said that will be what's left open space. And so we put a note on the map when we did it that this is not for residential development.
So in those the 4 parcels that were created, it would be 45, 46, 47, 48. Was that part of the original 44 parcel? Were those 4 parcels created out of the
Yes, that was one big parcel.
That was one big parcel.
Mm-hmm.
So we created 4.
Right.
And now
That
he
was
wants
in 2002?
2002-ish.
Okay, that's fine.
and now he wants to come back and create 3 more parcels,
Right,
putting the bulk of them on that 5.64 acre piece above and reserving the 20 below.
exactly.
It would be 3.
Well, it's actually 2 more parcels.
Yeah,
2 more parcels.
two
It's
additional
shading,
parcels.
it's split, that bottom 5 acres with the existing family home, that will become smaller to create the 2 1.1.
And then the remainder would be connected to
The other
4
side
acres below.
stays
And they would be
undeveloped.
restricted from any further,
Absolutely.
and that's on the map, providing that restriction.
I was just looking at the conditions, I thought more that it was in the conditions, that there would be that
Well,
restriction.
the letter shows it on there, Exhibit A.
Yeah,
Shows
that there will be no place on the map.
Okay, because I think it's extremely important that if that's indeed where they go, because in the past, the county didn't do that. I mean, they agreed to do it in the meeting, okay, but the minutes eventually get buried or disappear.
Sure.
And what's in
And
the
people
recorder's
change.
office and the guy comes in, the title company does their search and gives somebody a clean title on a piece of property, and it's got the zoning, and he's got 20 acres, and voila, I got 5 parcels. Not realizing those 5 parcels by developing had already been traded off to create these little ones above. And that's right now underlining